If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. Recognize those words? They were said by Thumper, one of my favorite cartoon characters of all time. I keep him around as a reminder of those words of wisdom and also a reminder of my dad, but that's a story for a later time. The point is that we have been trained to think that there are certain words that we should avoid, right? And that there are certain thoughts that we shouldn't have. In fact, I am a proponent of positive thinking and positive speaking and using positive words and framing everything in the positive, 100%. However, there are these few negative words that I believe as leaders we should definitely embrace and use more often. So today I want to run us through some of those words and why they're important and how they can shift our perspective as leaders from always trying to be in the positive to actually shifting the perception we have of certain things so that everything works for a positive or towards a positive outcome. Are you ready to know what these words are? Let's dive in. So as I said before, I am a huge proponent of positive thinking and using positive language as much as possible. In fact, I am one of those people that thinks that whenever possible, you should avoid words like have to and use words like, or phrases like have to and use phrases like get to, which have more of a positive tone as they land, at least in my body. I don't know about yours. But there are some words that as leaders, when we try to avoid them or see them as purely negative, we might actually be holding ourselves and the people we lead back. So remember that in anything that I talk about, when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about leading ourselves first. And when we can shift the way we see these words and the way we use them and the way we perceive the outcome that comes from living in these experiences, then the more we'll be able to lead ourselves to more positive outcomes regardless of what's going on around us, and the more we'll be able to lead others in a more positive light, right? Now, understand that I am talking today in a lot of generalities, right? There are obviously going to be specific circumstances that touch on very specialized moments or very personal and individual situations, right? So as with anything, take what serves you, use it, adapt it, and if there's anything that doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. We can have a conversation around it. Feel free to shoot me an email at marcy@marcyamaro.com. I would love to start a conversation around what you think on these topics. But the idea here is that there isn't anything in the world, well, I shouldn't just gloss it like that, but right, there are very few things in the world that are all good or all bad. And even when we look at the things that are all bad, there's typically at least one scenario in which we stop and we say, well, wait, what about this? Right? And the more we can focus on the things that looking at things and gaining perspectives and looking at the world through a lens that allows us to be more positive, the more we can advance our cause, our movement, and the things that propel us forward, right? Now, I am not in this discussion, and this is the other caveat, right? I am not in this discussion looking necessarily at morality, right? Or ethics. That's not what I'm talking about. That is a completely different conversation. And it is a conversation that we will never agree upon, I don't think. So I want to focus on looking at these terms or these thought processes in terms of leading our lives and our businesses, in terms of creating the possibility for ourselves and for others to move forward, and in terms of removing the shackles that might be binding us to a certain way of looking at the world that doesn't really serve us moving forward, especially with all the shifting that has been happening in the last 3 or 4 years in the world, right? So with all those things understood and in place, I want to start by saying that the first word that is usually considered negative that leaders should embrace is the word infect. Infect. Now, especially since the pandemic, talking about being infected or infecting someone or being infectious has taken on a very negative feel to it, right? The connotation behind it is very, very negative. But when we think about the word infect, here's what I want you to think about, and this is a little story, right? There once was a dad who had a daughter who had just gone through a very rough experience. She was a teenager, and she had gone through a very rough experience, and she was kind of depressed about it. So instead of giving her a long lecture, he took her to the kitchen and asked her to grab 3 pots, fill them with water, and start them to boil. Then in one pot, he put an egg. In another pot, he put carrots. And in the last pot, he put coffee beans. He just set everything up and let the things boil and kept just having casual conversations with his daughter. And after 10 minutes or so, he turned off all the pots and asked her to get the contents out of the pots and examine them, right? As you can imagine, upon examining the different contents, she saw different things. In the water with the egg became hard after 10 minutes. Hard-boiled egg, 10 minutes, right? The carrots became soft and mushy. The coffee beans actually turned the water brown and added their essence to the water. So the dad told the daughter, whenever you are faced with a difficult situation, you have 3 choices. Imagine that the boiling water is the hard times. You can be like the egg and let the hard times harden you. You can be like the carrots and let the hard times make you soft and lose your essence and who you are. Or you can be like the coffee beans, and instead of letting the hard times affect you, you affect them. You affect the times, you affect the circumstances and the surroundings, right? So instead of letting them change you, you infuse or infect the environment with your essence and your positivity, right? So that is what I'm talking about when I talk about embracing the word infect. As leaders, we get to infect the rooms we're in. Our ability to show up, our personality, our traits, our ability to be disciplined and to hold ourselves accountable, our ability to take responsibility and to share with others what that looks like, our level of commitment, our level of drive, and our level of accountability should all be infectious. We should actually take that which is within us and make it available to others so that others can catch it. So that others can be infected with that energy, with that passion, with that drive, with that ability to move beyond the circumstance and being like the coffee beans that spread their essence and their scent and their color around the circumstances and the environment around them, right? So that is the point. We should, as leaders, embrace the word infect as a positive element of sharing what is within us that has allowed us to lead, that has allowed us to grow, that has allowed us to gain a different perspective in the world, and share it and infect others with that in a positive way. Make sense? So the first word is infect. The second word is ignorant. Nobody wants to be ignorant, right? We look at stories and movies and comedies particularly, and whoever is ignorant is seen as the butt of the jokes. It's seen as the one that can be easily taken advantage of, right? Or can be easily fooled. Now, when I say ignorant, I want you to think more like Forrest Gump, right? For all practical intents and purposes, when it came to schooling or academia or having a conversation, Forrest Gump would have appeared to be ignorant. However, how much wisdom was in his adages and his sayings and the way he communicated and expressed the thoughts he had, the way he saw the world differently. The main thing that as leaders we get to be ignorant about is obstacles and impossibilities, which is something that, again, I think of Forrest Gump when I think about it, right? He had his leg braces, and yet when he was told to run, he ran to the point where he broke the braces and kept running until he didn't want to run anymore, right? So when we as leaders become ignorant of obstacles and impossibilities, we can lead our tribe, we can lead the people that follow us into a world of possibility, because guess what? We are ignoring the fact that it could fail. We are ignoring the fact that it could go wrong. We are ignoring all the different things that might happen that are outside of our control or our reach. And we are focusing on just the venturing forward, the possibility, the next step, the what can we do, right? So embracing ignorance in this sense is really important as a leader. And it's really important when we self-lead. Whenever we are faced with fear or with doubt, it's because we have moved from ignorance to a certain kind of awareness that is not serving us. So instead of being ignorant of the fact that if I make this offer, I might be rejected, I start becoming aware of the possible rejection and I live in that. Make sense? But if I just make the offer, being completely ignorant, putting blinders on, not seeing even the remotest possibility that there might be someone who rejects me, then I can move forward boldly and I can lead others boldly as well, right? And this ties closely with incompetent. Nobody wants to be seen as incompetent. In fact, one of the things that I teach my clients and the people that work with me is the levels of competence, right? And the very first level, actually the first two, have the word incompetent in them. And I had someone once comment on how that word is not very positive. And I said, well, it's not positive if you're not looking at it as what it really is. If you're incompetent, that means that you have room to grow and become competent. Right? So until we embrace the areas in which we are incompetent and see whether it is worth our time, effort, energy, and resources to become competent in that area, then we don't have room to grow. If I'm competent in everything that I want to do, then I'm going to quickly become stagnant. But if I identify at least one or two things in which I am incompetent, but that could help propel me to the next level, that could help me be a better leader, a better person, a better business owner, a better entrepreneur, a better coach, then that incompetence is something to embrace, because it's something that is going to propel me forward into gaining more capabilities, into being better, into being stronger, and into having more to share with the people that I'm called to serve. Right? So ignorance and incompetence go hand in hand, in my opinion, but both of them lead us to understanding that we can surpass any obstacle, that there are no impossibilities, and that we have room to grow, and we can grow if we set our mind to it. Make sense? Now, the last three that I want to focus on today, and there are a bunch, but I want to mention them first and then talk about why they're each important, even though they are typically seen as very, very negative. And the three last words are polarizing, offensive, and I'm going to add unapologetic there with offensive, and absolute truth. Right? So polarizing, offensive or unapologetic, and absolute truth. Now, these words, especially in the climate and the environment that we currently live in, are words that trigger most people, right? Don't be offensive. Make sure you're not offensive. Why are you trying to be polarizing? Are you trying to cause trouble? Why can't you just play along and be nice, play nice with everybody? Why can't you just figure out a way to be at peace with the entire world and have everybody like you? And especially in the social media environment that we live in, we just want those likes. We want all the comments to be positive. We want everybody to love everything we post, and we want everybody to think that our lives and the way we lead them are so incredibly powerful and positive that everybody should want to be like us, right? That's the climate we live in. But here's the truth. A leader that is not polarizing is not a leader at all. You cannot lead from the middle of the road. Think about it. If you are driving towards a destination and you're just placidly driving in the middle of the road without picking a lane, what is going to happen? Eventually, you're either going to run out of room to move forward, or somebody's going to crash against you. You can't lead from the middle of the road. In order to be a leader, you have to take a stand. You have to be willing to say, this is what I stand for and this is what I stand against. And not only is that going to give you more substance, it is also going to sift through the noise and sift through the potential people that might be your followers or your tribe or the people that you lead, right? Because when I stand and I say, look, I believe in God and I am going to say God, I'm not going to say the universe, I'm not going to say God or whatever you believe in, I'm going to say God. I'm being polarizing. But what that's doing is those people who cannot stand God being mentioned, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to follow me. They're not going to care about anything I have to say. And that is beautiful. Because God is a very important part of my life, and I don't want to have to take God out of the equation or be tiptoeing around the word God when it is such a central important part of who I am, how I do business, how I conduct myself, and how I move forward. To me, that is a non-negotiable. And so I will be polarizing every time I say things like what I just did. Because you know what? There is a segment of the population that is going to hear me say things like this and be like, yes, she's for me. And not only that, there will be another segment of the population that might be right now walking that middle of the road that is going to say, you know what? The way she says it, I don't feel so offended that I can't hear everything else that she's saying and everything else makes sense. So let me follow for a little bit and see where she takes me with this or see where she goes with this, right? And so those two segments I will work with. The ones that are fully offended, which comes to the next word, right? By the word God, then go find someone who doesn't use the word God. There's plenty of them out there. You don't have to follow me, and that's perfectly okay, right? Because the word offensive or being unapologetically, and I'm not talking about deliberately going out there and insulting people. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you take a stand, when you are polarizing and you take a stand, it is inevitable that some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you. And to those people that hate you, you might appear offensive. And you have to be okay with that because guess what? Even if you tried to please everybody, it is unavoidable that some people are going to dislike you and some people are going to dislike me. It's unavoidable. My mom says all the time that we're not $20 bills that everybody will like us, right? And even some people will see a $20 bill and not pick it up. So it's really important that we understand that especially when you're taking a stand for something, especially when you are trying to create anything meaningful in your life, there is going to be tension, there is going to be dissension, there are going to be people who disagree with you. And that is fine. And we can all disagree with one another in a way that doesn't cause third world wars, right? Or that doesn't cause huge turmoil. As long as we understand that it is important that we both exist and that we both are open about what we believe, because some people will resonate and agree with me and some people will resonate and agree with the other side. And that's what makes room for everybody in this world, right? But part of that is understanding that to you, there has to be an absolute truth. And absolute truth has become a negative word in recent times. It didn't used to be. In fact, science has been looking for absolute truths for centuries, right? Philosophy has been looking for absolute truths for forever. Theology has been looking for absolute truths for forever. And there's nothing wrong with believing in something absolutely. In fact, the only thing that distinguishes true leaders from mediocre leaders is their ability to have such conviction in what they stand for and stand against that they are not easily swayed. You get me? So the idea of absolute truth here is that you must be so convicted in whatever it is that you believe and that you lead people through that you don't easily change your mind or sway. Imagine that you're following a leader, any leader, and they're taking you to the left for a little bit. And then they go, no, wait, I don't think this is the right route anymore. Let me go this way. And they start going to the right. And you're following them. You're like, okay, anybody can make one pivot, right? And you're following them. And then they go a little bit down the road and they go, no, wait. This doesn't feel right either. Or maybe I was wrong about this. Let me go this way. How long are you going to follow someone like that? Not very long at all. You're going to start questioning not just their ability to lead, but their sanity. If they're constantly changing what they believe and what they present as truth or as necessary or as important. So as leaders, we need to be clear first on our way of perceiving absolute truth. And we need to be fully convicted in that absolute truth before we can lead others. See, one of my absolute truths is that every single human being on this planet was designed and created to accomplish something that only they can accomplish. What is your calling is uniquely and genuinely yours, nobody else's. The same way that my calling is uniquely and genuinely mine, not anybody else's, right? That is my absolute truth, and that is my conviction. So when I see any human being, my thought process, and this is going to sound funny, but my thought process is this. God didn't create any wasted materials. He's not creating anything that is going to go to waste or that is not necessary. So if you're sitting here and you are breathing, then that means that there's something you're meant to do and accomplish. There's no such thing as wasted flesh. And sometimes I say that and people get thrown back, right? Or they don't like that expression of wasted flesh. But what I mean is there are no people walking around just so that that amount of flesh can be used to create a body. There's a purpose. If you exist, if you're alive, regardless of your current circumstances, regardless of your schooling, regardless of whatever it is that you might be experiencing, there is a purpose that you're meant to work towards. There is a calling that you're meant to follow. There is something that you're meant to do that nobody else can do for you, right? And I say this with such conviction because to me, that's absolute truth. And somebody else might come and question me and tell me, but wait a minute, what about serial killers? I believe they have a purpose too. Now, that purpose might not align with what I would think is the best thing to happen on the planet. But how much do we learn, or how much have we learned about the human psyche because of serial killers? How often do we see those things happen that they cause, and we're stirred to compassion, and we start movements, and we start getting together and rallying together towards something more positive because of what they did? So it's impossible for me to buy into this theory that there are human beings here that are not meant to be here, right? And that's my absolute truth, and that's my conviction, and that's a big part of why I do what I do. But if you don't have conviction to the nth degree about something, then, to quote Hamilton, if you stand for nothing, what do you fall for? Everything, right? And that is where this idea of embracing absolute truth comes in. Right. So just before we do the quick recap, I have an invitation for you. I am going to be hosting a series of webinars starting next week, starting soon, on how to live a fully powerful, confident, fulfilled life. And those webinars are going to walk you through the 3 main things that we need to consider as we move forward in our calling and as we step out of feeling stuck and into achievement, as we move from feeling like an imposter to living with impact, as we move from going through the motions and into living lives that are meaningful, powerful, positive, and that lead to your real calling. If you are interested in participating with me in these webinars and these workshops, make sure to look for the information in the show notes, in the description, so that you can register. The first one will be next week, all right? And now to recap. There are some negative words that as leaders we get to embrace. The first is to infect. We get to infect the room with our energy, with our passion, with our personality. The second one is ignorant. We get to be ignorant about obstacles and impossibilities and move forward as if those didn't exist. The next one is incompetent. Incompetence gives us room to grow so that we can move through the stages of competence and become masterfully competent at whatever it is that we get to work on and that we want to do with without incompetence, there's no room for growth, right? The next one, polarizing. We can't lead from the middle of the road. We have to pick a side and take a stand for something and against something, which means we are going to, next word, be offensive. But we get to be unapologetic about it, right? Regardless of what we do, some people are going to be offended by what we say. Some people are going to gravitate and be magnetized by what we say. So we get to be offensive and unapologetic about what? About our absolute truths, our convictions, the things that we are 100% fully convicted of, that drive our calling and that drive who we are and what we do. Now, I hope this conversation has been helpful. If it has, I invite you to share it with someone in your life that you know can benefit from it. And until next time, this has been Marcia Amaro, and this has been Sincerely Speaking. Make sure to check the show notes for the webinar information. Talk soon.